Ave Maria in the Afternoon is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Welcome to Ave Maria in the Afternoon, examining the world through the lens of faith from the heart of the Church to help us navigate the culture. Here's Dr. Marcus Peter.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us on this hour of Ave Maria in the Afternoon. I'm Marcus Peter. We're starting this hour by talking with our friend Andrea Picciotti-Bear, who is a legal analyst for EWTN News and the director of the Conscience Project. She does amazing work for the church, and this is a new piece that she's penned for the National Catholic Register about pivotal points for international religious freedom. Challenges in the United States take place, and I'm very keenly acquainted with those challenges. But as someone who came from a nation that has all but destroyed religious freedom and freedom of speech, and as someone who then went on to become a missionary and evangelist in countries where those same freedoms simply don't exist or are being stifled, I can assure you that what Andrea says here is true. That the kind of anywhere from subjugation to stifling to even violence faced by our Christian brothers and sisters abroad remind us that religious freedom requires constant vigilance. This has been one of the greatest concerns I've had while talking with local Catholics here in the United States, that for some reason we think that just because we have freedom of speech and freedom of religion as instituted liberties, their constitutional guarantees, that we are fine. The truth of the matter is Malaysia had that, and it lost it in one generation. That's all it took. One generation, and freedom of speech was completely destroyed, legally, constitutionally. And I see the trajectory here. And so Andrea Picciotti-Bear wants us to understand the cost of these liberties and why they have to be fought for to be continue to be preserved. We go on from there to speak with Dr. Ray Guarendi. He joins us today, and we're going to have a really engaging conversation. I had a good time with him yesterday about addiction, a sickness that touches all of us: alcohol, drugs, gambling, pornography, something else, betting, what have you. We all know someone bearing this cross. Some of us might be the people bearing these crosses. Ray and I are going to talk about what parents can do to help children in this situation, or spouses, but also to just simply acknowledge that this is a reality of the fallenness of human nature. We'll talk about all of this after the headlines.
Thanks, Marcus. Good afternoon, everyone. This is your Ave Maria Radio News for Wednesday, October 29th. It's the feast of Blessed Chiara Luce Badano. Today's news is brought to you by the nonprofit Revive app. Want to deepen your faith? Connect with a certified spiritual companion today on the Revive app. That's REVIV and then the number 3. Interest rates are being cut for a second time this year.
In support of our goals and in light of the balance of risks to employment and inflation, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to lower our policy interest rate by a 0.25 percentage point.
The benchmark rate is now in the range of 3.75 to 4%. The Fed's cut has a trickle-down effect on consumers, lowering mortgage, credit card, and auto loan insurance rates. There's no end in sight for the government shutdown as it rolls into its 29th day. A 13th effort to end the impasse failed yesterday in the Senate, and there's no plans to vote on the measure today. The Trump administration says that the military will be paid, but thousands of air traffic controllers have missed their first full paychecks. Food assistance benefits are also set to expire for millions of Americans this weekend. Character AI is planning to ban children from talking with its AI chatbots starting next month. Matt Mattinson has more.
The company will remove the ability for users under 18 years old to engage in open-ended conversations with AI by November 25th after growing scrutiny over how young users are interacting with the technology. However, Character AI did note that it plans to develop an under-18 experience, allowing teens to create videos, stories, and streams with its AI characters.
NVIDIA is the first company to reach the $5 trillion mark. The tech company reached a historic mark as Wall Street opened Wednesday. NVIDIA's value has been boosted by the demand for its AI chips. From your AveMariaRadio.net news desk, I'm Steve Clark.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. October the 27th marks the observance of International Religious Freedom Act of 1998, the IRFA. It created legal mechanisms in the states to monitor and respond to religious persecution abroad. Joining me to talk about this pivotal point that we are at in terms of international religious freedom is my friend Andrea Picciotti-Bear, legal analyst for EWTN News, director of the Conscience Project. Follow her work at conscience-project.org. She is a woman of many talents and wears many hats. Andrea, thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great, Marcus. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And I'm very thankful that you have penned this commentary in National Catholic Register. I want to begin, this is an ancillary argument to the core reality that you're highlighting, but I wonder if you could just speak to how much we take for granted the wondrous liberties of speech and religion that we have here in the United States.
Yeah, no, I think that that's a really great way to start, a great place to start, because we've kind of gotten so accustomed to the freedoms that are in our Constitution, our federal laws, state laws that protect religious freedom and free speech, that we don't really appreciate that that's not the case for the majority of other people living across the globe. And there was a great report from Aid to the Church in Need just last week that was identifying and flagging the grave situation of religious persecution across the globe and in different hotspots in the country and in the world, and that how many of those places do not even have the legal structure that protects religious freedom and free speech. So there's really nothing to hang your hat on. You know, we have our problems, but we've got laws that we can point to, we can turn to. And I think that that's a really important starting point. It's also a great point that we can use that to point to in our diplomacy and in our kind of promotion of international religious freedom, to talk about how kind of the secret sauce of America and a lot of our tranquility, internal tranquility, domestic tranquility, is because we allow for religious pluralism and we allow for free expression.
Yep. And precisely because of that, Andrea, you highlighted a really crucial thing. Again, a little ancillary, but it was part of your article. Do you have any comments about individuals who try to downplay that report from Aid to the Church in Need about the fact that these are religious persecutions, not just tribal and isolated situations globally?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good point. And I'm sure anyone that's been paying attention this last week to social media or things going on, there's kind of a little palace intrigue in the Vatican right now where the Secretary of State, is it Cardinal Parolin?
Cardinal, yeah.
Who was basically downplaying the religious nature of persecution going on in places like Nigeria. And having had many conversations with you, Marcus, and written about this, and really looking at people who are on the ground, in Nigeria, advocates as well as clergymen and seminarians and priests and leaders from the country of Nigeria, there is a clear target on Christians' backs. And that's a really important to say. It's not because there's an issue of herdsmen versus farmers. That may aggravate situations and create divisions, but the fact that people are being basically slaughtered in their churches or while they're seeking refuge in kind of near church communities is a real indication that religion is placing a target on people's backs. And I think that it's important, especially as Catholics, to speak out clearly about that. The idea of kind of tribal differences, even the Biden administration said it will chalk it up to climate change. Maybe all of those are pressure points. But the fact of the matter is, to be a Christian in Nigeria, to be a Christian in China, to be a Catholic in Nicaragua really does put you in kind of the firing range of the government or kind of non-state actors that the government is permitting to act with no recourse whatsoever.
In that light, as you've rightly been highlighting, not just in what you've shared, but also in your article, the importance of the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998 cannot be understated.
No, absolutely. And this is, it's really kind of a wonderful history, this act, right? Because it was bipartisan across the board, almost unanimously voted in by Congress and signed by President Bill Clinton, a Democrat. Mm-hmm. And it was at a time where we really understood that religious freedom wasn't a bipartisan issue, it was a nonpartisan issue. And that's a really important thing to kind of return to. It's a core American value. It gives the United States basically the direction to take action to promote religious freedom and to call out abusers of religious freedom and use diplomatic and other economic sanctions so that we're not, being directed to get into military, operations, but use the power that we have in our diplomacy and in our economic strength to encourage people to permit pluralism and to stamp out violence and persecution based on someone's religion.
And because of that, when we think of the U.S. side and U.S. jurisprudence, we realize that we have religious freedom in First Amendment free exercise and establishment clauses. But what this 1998 Act allows us to do is to intervene where necessary in nations that simply don't have that.
Yeah, and it was really revolutionary. I mean, this was a time where people started seeing that there's great instability in the world, in regions where there isn't religious freedom. So this is kind of, let's get at the problem before it gets to be tragic. And let's talk about the importance of respecting religious differences, but also allowing those differences to kind of flourish, to allow people. And we know that it feeds into, as Catholics, it feeds into our basic understanding of the dignity of the human person to be able to freely seek a relationship with God. And, the way that you do that is you promote governments allowing for that exercise of the human freedom, the free will to seek God and to come to the plenitude of truth. You don't get it through coercion, and you also don't get it through suppression either.
Yeah. And that, therefore, lends us the lens to really think about, from the U.S. side, we have religious freedom protected, and it's a reality that needs to keep being fought for. I mentioned this in the open, too. It takes one generation to lose that liberty. It's not something we can take for granted.
No, you're absolutely right, Marcus. And, one of the phrases that I've heard often is, if you don't exercise a right, it's kind of like not exercising a muscle. It atrophies, and that's where, as believers, we're kind of called to show how important religion is in our lives, live coherent lives. And when someone says, why are you doing that? Well, my faith teaches me that this is true. And I'm not going to, I've got to have a dose of prudence and know when to speak and when to be silent and to pray and when to act. But in general, we've got a big opportunity to evangelize through our joyful experience of the faith. And that itself will be a chance to show why religious freedom and protections under the law matter, because people will see, my neighbor here, maybe I'm not a religious person, but my neighbor is. And I want to allow my neighbor to live his or her life consistent with their beliefs.
And that leads us to the question of action. We have the mechanism in place. We have freedom of speech. Can you give us some very practical, what can everyone listening do to champion the cause of religious liberty in the world?
Well, I think first off and always pray, right? We need to pray for the persecuted. We need to pray for the persecutors. We need to really have that kind of eye-opening moment where people understand that violence isn't the way that we deal with differences. But from here in the U.S., we really do just need to get the nominee for the ambassador to international religious freedom confirmed, and that needs to happen quickly.
Yep. Andrea, tremendous joy to connect with you as always. Thank you for making the time.
Well, thanks for having me on, Marcus. Have a great evening.
You too. My guest has been Andrea Pichotti-Bear. She is legal analyst for EWTN News and director of the Conscience Project. Follow her work at conscience-project.org. We've been talking about International Religious Freedom Day and the Act of 1998 that allows us to champion the cause around the world. I'm Marcus Peter.
You like pizza? Me too. And for that, we can thank our friend, Tom Monahan. First, he starts with $900 and opens one pizza shop. Then it's worldwide, thousands of shops. But all this was just a warm-up for his greatest achievement yet. He built a university.
God inspired Tom to build up generations of men and women who have a hunger to reach the world for Christ. This place is Ave Maria University.
Visit avemaria.edu to see what's next.
Christ is the answer, with Father John Riccardo.
John 14. This is Jesus in the upper room with the disciples before he's going out to his sacrifice of himself for our salvation. And Philip says to the Lord, "Show us the Father, and we'll be satisfied." And Jesus looks at Philip and says, "Philip, have I been with you all this time? Don't you understand? When you see me, you're looking at the Father." In fact, only two people throughout human history have given rise to the question, not who is he, but what is he? The two people are Buddha and Jesus. Buddha's answer was, don't come to me, don't look to me, look to my doctrine, look to what I teach. Jesus' answer was, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble of heart. Jesus is explicitly claiming to be God.
In her diary, St. Faustina wrote, "If only I had a spiritual director from the beginning, I would not have wasted so many of God's graces. If even the saints needed spiritual guidance, how much more do we?" The nonprofit Revive app lets you meet virtually with certified spiritual companions, scheduling sessions at your convenience, helping you grow closer to Christ. Your first 2 sessions are free. Download the Revive app today. That's REVIV, and then the number 3.
Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter, joined by the inimitable, legendary Dr. Ray Guarendi. He is a psychologist, but also a Catholic, and apparently the two they can go hand in hand.
They can go hand in hand, but they can also butt heads pretty hard. Pretty hard. You drill down deep into psychology, and you'll find that there's a lot of Psych 101 that collides with our faith.
I mean, Ray, I took enough psychology that I could have a second undergraduate degree. It was just, like I extra majored in mine and whatnot, right? And nowhere was I introduced to the concept that God or a notion of spirituality could be part of a psychological examination of the human person.
And that's an irony, too, because therapists will tell you that a good percentage, perhaps the majority, that come into the office have a religious worldview of some type. And it interacts with the way they interact with the world. We were told in grad school, you do not explore religion with a person. You maintain a dogmatically neutral stance.
And they don't see the irony of this.
They didn't see the irony in it. So what I found was all I had to do was ask the people, where does your religious faith play into any of this? Mm-hmm. And most of them will then tell you, well, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, or they'll say, I don't pay any attention to religion whatsoever. So you realize as a therapist how you interweave the two together. Somebody tells me, I'm leaving my wife and 5 kids, and basically I don't care, and I don't have any religious beliefs, and I got to approach that very differently than I might approach it from a guy who says, I'm really struggling with my conscience because I'm a devout Catholic, and I don't know what this is going to do to me and my relationship with God. Completely different approach.
I'm listening to you say all this, and I'm realizing we are completely bereft of a notion that God knows our mind better than we know our mind. And if we can be very honest, the entire work of psychology is a relatively novel area in the soft sciences. I was schooled in the Freudian Jungian structures, but then over and above that, they threw at us, B.F. Skinner, operant conditioning. And then you had that whole rise in the 60s with Norman Vincent Peale and his ilk. With
positive thinking.
Yeah, the pop psychology stuff. And you start wondering, every decade or so we had the whim of some new school of thought.
Oh, yeah. That's because we're going to, in psychology, my first book was titled You're a Better Parent Than You Think. Uh-huh. And I wrote it because I was 28 years old, and I was in a mental health center in Columbiana County. And I was shocked at the number of well-meaning, pretty thoughtful, level-headed parents completely confused, unsure of themselves, thinking they're going to do something psychologically damaging to their child's long-term makeup. I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. I remember thinking, I don't remember my mom and dad agonizing over which move to make when and how it's going to affect me when I'm on the Springer Show 22 years from now. So the book was written in a response to what is psychology doing to parents.
Right.
And it's only gotten worse.
Because, you think about that whole pop psychology movement, right? The whole thing was you need to make sure you're feeling good about yourself all the time. And then that translated into parenting. Parents, you have an obligation to make sure your kid feels good all the time. I'm a parent of 3 children on Earth. They're 4, 3, and 1. If I lived by that principle, my kids would run amok.
They'd be brats.
Yeah.
They'd be obnoxious little self-centered brats. And don't be surprised, Marcus, how many parents are living by that principle, because they look at people like me, where he's got a letter after his name, PhD, permanent head damage, and they're looking at this thinking, well, the guy knows how to do it, so you better just listen to him. Well, that goes against my instincts, but who knows? I always tell parents, it's your home, your morals, you're raising this child according to the things you feel most important in life. Not Dr. Yule feel good. Mm-hmm. Not some secular expert who thinks God is a long ago makeup of antiquated Neanderthals. And that's what's happening. And I've noticed psychology really influences everything. It influences our education. It influences our religion. Much religion has swallowed whole a lot of psychological principles that they don't realize if you examine them with any depth, they would collide. There's a book by a guy named William Kilpatrick called The Seduction of Psychology, and he talks about this. He says, on the surface, tolerance, open-mindedness, affirming of people, sounds so Christian, and it really does, but then you start digging deeper and deeper. I wrote a book called Jesus the Master Psychologist. And what I commented upon in so many ways is, here's Jesus saying things that in our modern thinking collides. When you do something, just say, I'm a worthless servant. Wait, whoa, Jesus. Hey, wait a minute, man. Come on, didn't you take Psych 101? Didn't you have a counseling class? You can't say you're a worthless servant.
What's that going to do to your self-esteem?
That's terrible. Yeah, exactly.
And so Kilpatrick in the Seduction of Psychology, he goes right for the jugular. He talks about things like pop psychology and the moralistic therapeutic version of psychology, and he goes on, or even gentle parenting, right? And he addresses how that stuff tells you that if you do this, you'll feel good, and it's all tolerant. But then if you go against that, then you're the bigot.
Let me tell you what's going to happen bad to your kid and your family if you ignore what I say.
Right.
That's a classic formula of, here's the psychologically correct way to do it. If you do it this way, we virtually guarantee you're going to get the outcome you want.
Right.
If you don't get the outcome you want, it's because you did it wrong.
Right.
And don't blame us if you ignore us and your kid turns out to be on Springer for a week and a half because you simply went against us, and we know better than you do what's good for your kid.
Right. Or Dr. Phil. Can't forget his show. Although he does a lot of good work. Now, yesterday, this is personal to me too. Yesterday, we had the death anniversary of Matthew Perry. Many of our listeners remember him as the character Chandler from Friends. And
I never saw Friends once.
I don't blame you.
I have never seen any. I play trivia, and I listen to these questions that are being asked, and I want to say to these teams who win, what have you done with your life? How do you know that?
That's right. Especially this pop culture stuff. And so Friends, it was weird. It was coming out in popularity when I was really young, so I wasn't in the target group, and I chanced upon a few episodes as a very young child, and I never found it funny, so I never watched it. But after his death, I started looking up some of his stuff, and this guy had a bit of a... He's like you. He had mastered...
Short?
No.
Okay.
It mastered the art of comedy down to delivery and timing and the right kind of linguistic wit. And so he had honed this. He had a gift for it, but he had honed it. And so it was really sad that at 53, he died of a ketamine overdose in his bathtub, in a hot tub at home. And it was this long life of just dealing with addiction and substance abuse and in and out of rehab. He'd go to rehab, and then when the wards weren't looking, he'd call someone to come to the parking lot, and he'd buy ketamine. He just never could kick it. And I know that's such a broad way to open the topic, but you're dealing with all of this from the side of helping parents whose children are suffering from addictions in this hedonistic age.
It is easy to become discontent with life. And the irony is, we are the most comfortable, secure, well-fed, long-living culture the world has ever seen. And yet we're among the most discontent if you look at worldwide surveys. We rank near the bottom in contentedness. So when you're that discontent, I gotta find something to make me feel better. I gotta find some. I'm searching here for something. Okay, so whether it's ketamine, whether it's a drug experience, I want to feel different. I want to feel different than I do. And I think at the beginning roots of addiction is the fact that I gotta find something that's going to make me much more content, more relaxed, more stable, more pleasurable. Whatever it is, there's something missing in just my living life. I think that's down at the bottom.
My guest is Dr. Ray Guarendi, a master psychologist, Catholic, and the two go hand in hand. And he's talking with us about the reality of addiction and how Christ, the master psychologist, gives us the way forward. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866-AVE-MARIA or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
Ave Maria in the Afternoon is underwritten by the following nonprofit organization: Real Estate for Life. Buying or selling your home or business property? Real Estate for Life can connect you with one of 1,400 pro-life real estate agents around the world. When Real Estate for Life receives a referral fee, they donate 70% to Ave Maria Radio and Human Life International. More information at realestateforlife.org or 877-LIFE-US1. That's realestateforlife.org.
Hello, Steve Ray here from Footprints of God Pilgrimages. The land of our Lord and Our Lady is calling us. We're heading back to the Holy Land over Christmas break this year. We have the best, most reliable guides and services awaiting us. The holy sites are open, and the local Christians are anxious to see us. Galilee, Jerusalem, Nazareth, Bethlehem. No crowds, no lines. Hope you can join us.
Find the Ave Maria Radio travel tab at AveMariaRadio.net.
This program brought to you in part by Ave Maria, Florida, a big kind of small town where golf carts take you everywhere and there's always something fun around the corner. Discover championship golf, resort-style amenities, and a town center full of shopping and dining. With Ave Maria University and Ave Maria Catholic Church at its heart, it's a community full of connection and charm. More than 25 model homes are available for viewing. More information can be found at AveMaria.com. That's AveMaria.com.
He was a mystic and reformer who died at the age of 33.
Matthew Bunson and the Doctors of the Church.
St. Catherine of Siena accomplished something no one thought possible. She convinced Pope Gregory XI to return to Rome after the popes had lived in France for almost the whole of the 14th century. They've been there ever since.
For more about the Doctors of the Church, visit doctorsofthechurch.com.
It's time for Family Man with Dr. Gregory Popcak.
The Church teaches us that every Catholic family is meant to be a domestic church. That sounds nice, but what does it really mean? Well, a domestic church is a household of people united to each other and God through the sacramental life of the Church and committed to living out Christ's sacrificial love in their relationships with each other and the world. The degree to which your family already lives this vision is the degree to which your family already is a domestic church. And the degree to which your family struggles to live that vision is the degree to which your family is called to become a domestic church. Every Catholic household is a domestic church that's called to witness to the already present, but not yet fulfilled, kingdom of God. To discover more ways your family can celebrate the liturgy of domestic church life, check out the newest editions of Parenting with Grace and visit CatholicCounselors.com. I'm Dr. Greg Popchak, but you can call me Family Man.
To discover more ways faith can enrich your life, visit CatholicCounselors.com.
Strained or broken relationships are a given in most of our lives. Friends fall away, siblings drift apart, children sever ties with their parents, and despite our best efforts, these painful fissures are difficult to mend. Hi, I'm Dr. Ray. If you want to learn how to communicate better with the difficult people in your life and be a more easygoing, more forgiving person, check out my book, How to Get Along with Almost Everybody. Check it out. And all my other books on the store page at AveMariaRadio.net. That's AveMariaRadio.net.
Good afternoon, welcome back. I'm Marcus Pete. I'm talking with Dr. Ray Guarendi. He's a master psychologist and preacher, evangelist, and we're talking about the reality of addiction. Ray, at the end of the last segment, we had just brought up the reality of Matthew Perry, but it's not just him. It's not an isolated event. We've known a lot of names throughout history who've gotten all the fame, all the fortune in the world. Elvis Presley, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston. And the ending was the same, some kind of substance abuse addiction.
I'm not content with what I have. There's got to be more. And I think it's safe to say that those people who are, as you say, at the upper echelons of society's admiration and pleasure are more likely to get into those kind of conscious-altering states. They can't be content and pleased with all that is coming their way. There has to be more.
You know, the human nature tells you that if I achieve these upper echelons, the wealth, the pleasure, the power, the honor, I will reach some kind of psychological satisfaction.
And they don't. That's the irony. That's the irony. They don't. It's one of the great arguments for God. And C.S. Lewis said that. He said, if there's nothing in the world that can satisfy me, it must mean I was made for another world. That makes total sense. Why wouldn't you be? Look at you. Look at what you have. And yet you're miserable. How does that fit? The farm mom who raised 7 kids, and you measure her peace with life, and she's leagues above the highest musician or the greatest athlete in terms of her contentment with her existence. How is this? This makes no sense. Our culture says you should feel better with all that, and you don't. Something's wrong. Well, try this chemical.
Yeah. Try this chemical, try that chemical. And so what you're saying, we're seeing studies come out of it. I've seen you quote those studies. About since the 2000s, gratitude levels in the developed and wealthy world are going down. Discontent is on the rise. And like you said earlier, and we're the most over-medicated generation in human history.
30% of adult females are now on psychotropic meds. And in some places, 20 to 30% of the boys are medicated for ADHD or ADD.
Would you please repeat that for us, just so that everyone really grasps
certain pockets of our society, certain places, where the boys, 20 to 30% of them are medicated for ADHD or ADD. We've created a culture that is video cocaine. And so when I have to sustain my attention for more than 8 seconds or 3 seconds or a flitting second, stuff like reading and listening to a person talking and sitting in Mass and hearing the same prayer I heard last week. Ew! Ew! I use this example. I come from a place not far from an amusement park called Cedar Point. You familiar with it?
Oh, yeah.
Known for the most roller coasters in the world. When I was a kid, The big ride at Cedar Point was the Blue Streak. 45 feet high, 42 miles an hour down that first hill. Oh, what a rush. You'd stand in line for 2 hours to get to the Blue Streak. And then they got the Mean Streak. And the Mean Streak was higher, and it was faster. Then pretty soon they had the Magnum, which was 200 feet high in the first hill and 70 miles an hour. Well, that was okay until they got the Millennium Force. 300 feet high, 93 miles an hour down the first hill. That's old. That's last week's news. The high-speed thrill dragster. 400 feet corkscrew high, coming down in a vertical corkscrew spin. If you had sunglasses or contacts, close your eyes. They're going to get blown off you. 200 plus miles an hour out the magnetic chute. Go back to the Blue Streak now. You got mothers there with their 4-year-olds. And if some kid, age 13, gets on the Blue Streak, she has to get off going, that was a waste of my time.
Really?
You see what has happened? We've just pushed harder and harder and harder and harder for stimulation, for pleasure, for titillation, and much of everyday life is just routine.
Okay, so what you're highlighting here is that, like you've mentioned, that we're rising in discontent, we're rising in misery. But basically, everyone in the affluent world is miserable right now. But what you're saying here is it's because we've pushed the threshold of enjoyment so much that the daily beautiful things like a sunset and working on the farm.
Kind of boring,
I hate that I've heard kids say it exactly like that.
They do. It's like, ew. And with smartphones now, and I don't want to veer too off topic, but with smartphones, we're just raising a whole generation of kids who must have immediate stimulation. Immediate. And how will that affect everything else that we once called the human person? Give me my drugs. And the interesting thing about addiction, we always think of it as in terms of an illicit substance or something that is, quote unquote, bad for us in the long run. But in fact, we are addicted to psychotropic meds. The amount of people on anxiety-reducing medication is off the charts. Whether it's benzodiazepines, where it's serotonin reuptake inhibitors, whatever it is, I don't want to feel uncomfortable. I go into a crowd like that and I really get anxious. I'm going to tell my doctor, well, here, take this before you go into that crowd. And I'm not pushed to deal with my own discomfort. Come on, man, give me something that's quicker. Now, we got it. And that's kind of what's happening. It's washing over us.
Are we seeing a recognition in the psychological industry, the psychiatric industry, pharmaceutical industry, that people are becoming dependent on psychotropic medication?
There are voices. They're not the majority, but more and more people are saying, what are we doing? We've been down this road too long. We're seeing what's happening at the end of it. More and more voices are screaming about smartphones for kids. And you're starting to get a little movement. Social media, some of them are saying, look, the kid's got to prove he's over 16 to get on this stuff. So we're trying little baby steps, if you use a cliche. Mm-hmm. We're trying to pull it back. The biggest thing is parents to have the guts and the strength to say, I'm countercultural. A faith-filled Catholic parent is going to be countercultural. It's that simple. And if you worry about whatever psychological damage and resentment that you're going to breed in your kid because he's the only one 14 who doesn't have a smartphone, you better just give him the keys to the car and move out and say, here, kid, it's your house. Because you are unable to raise a child with your morals and standards because, Marcus, the experts tell you, if your standards are too high, your kids are going to rebel. They're going to puke up religion. They're going to turn on everything you ever tried to teach them, and it's all because you were out of sync with the culture. And the kid knew it by the time he was 15, thinking, how did I get these Neanderthals? Yeah, That's the message. I can't tell you now. I used to think that parents were afraid to take these kinds of countercultural stands because they were afraid of doing something psychologically incorrect. I now think they parent in fear. My kid will hate me. My kid will get resentful. My kid will get sneaky. My kid will turn to things that I am fearful of. And so they're parenting in fear. And I say, you can never parent in fear. You can't. I always say this. If my kids go astray from what I tried to teach them, I can live with myself if they had to go through me. I'm not sure I could live with myself if I stepped aside.
We're talking about addictions with Dr. Ray Guarendi. Ray, so many people listening right now have spouses, children, family members who have at least one, if not some kind of addiction. And in the next segment, we're going to talk about things like sports betting and not just substances. Just very quickly, as we're rounding off this segment, we're continuing on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.
When the need for senior care arises, home is where the heart is. Visiting Angels provides home care for mom or dad up to 24 hours per day, including personal care, meals, and light housework. You may select your professional caregiver with Visiting Angels. More information at visitingangels.com or at 877-374-LIVE. That's 877-374-LIVE. Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care.
St. Therese once told her sister Celine that when we trust ourselves and not God, our soul becomes barren and incapable of virtue. Her remedy? External works of charity. We all try to do it on our own sometimes without asking for God's help. At St. Paul Evangelization, we suggest sharing the gospel with someone who needs it. Check out streetevangelization.com to find a team near you where you can share the love of Jesus. If there isn't one in your area yet, perhaps God is calling you to start a team in your city. To learn more, visit streetevangelization.com.
Ave Maria School of Law is the Roman Catholic law school in the United States. Consistently ranked in the Princeton Review as one of the best and most conservative law schools, as well as pre-law's most devout law school. Ave Maria School of Law provides a traditional legal education while emphasizing how the law intersects with the Catholic intellectual tradition and natural law philosophy. Ave Maria School of Law, unabashedly Catholic, consistently excellent. For more information, visit avemarialaw.edu. Underwritten in part by this not-for-profit.
A great Bible study leads to an encounter with Jesus Christ that compels you to share your faith with others. This Advent, join Catholics across the country starting November the 5th for Bible Across America, a nationwide 7-week Bible study on Jesus as Teacher and Lord, spearheaded by our sponsor, the St. Paul Center for Biblical Theology. With some of today's leading Catholic voices. Join the nationwide Bible study by visiting stpaulcenter.com/Advent.
Living the Beatitudes with Father Bjorn.
Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. The virtue of purity and holy chastity is certainly a very important thing, but I think we can misunderstand this beatitude. As human beings in our fallen state, we tend to love things and use people. But we're meant to use things and love people. We can manipulate in relationships, and we can try to control other people, and we can focus on other people as objects. But to be pure in heart is to be in love, and ultimately to be pure in heart and to be happy is to be in love with God Himself as well. This beatitude calls us to have a focus on being open to choosing God, choosing life, to choose love. If God is not the ultimate end of our desires and our hopes and dreams, we will be the saddest of people. Let's say yes to God and choose His way, be focused on His love and pure in heart. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God.
For more about the Beatitudes, visit EWTNRC.com.
Man failed the first test of freedom. He refused God's plan of love and chose freely to sin and made himself a slave to sin. That first sin gave mankind the gene or inclination to sin, which has given birth to numerous other sins. The Catholic Catechism reminds us that the exercise of freedom does not imply a right to say or do everything. Man is not totally self-sufficient, and his final goal is not his own self-interest and the enjoyment of earthly goals. When man violates the moral law, he becomes his own prisoner, disrupting neighborly fellowships while rebelling against divine truth. For freedom, Galatians tells us, Christ has set us free. He redeemed us from sin, which held man in bondage. This is Peggy Stanton, and this has been the Order of Malta's Minute with the Catechism.
Good afternoon. Welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter, talking with Dr. Ray Guarendi. He is a clinical psychologist who's been in the forefront of working with integrating the faith into the examination of the psyche of the human person. And he's been doing this for decades now, and he's seen the...
Easy there, pal. You could have just said years.
It was a compliment. I was going to say that you've seen...
Get off my lawn.
So, as you've been rightly highlighting, at this point, especially in the developed world, virtually everyone knows someone suffering from some kind of addiction. Before we go any further, Ray, can you give, first of all, a word of hope that addiction doesn't have to cripple and end you, and secondly, resources?
As a psychologist, the most potent intervention that I've seen in ending an addiction and keeping clean, religious conversion. There's nothing that can touch that. Whatever program you get into, if there isn't a religious focus, it does not succeed as well. So in fact, it speaks to people saying, oh, wait a minute, I think I'm finding what I've been missing all this time that was brewing my discontent. There was the hole, like Augustine says, the God-sized hole, you know. Now, that said, most people are not going to see it that way. They're not going to go in that direction. One of the biggest things I have to deal with parents and relatives of folks who have addictions, severe addictions, where they're watching them self-destruct, is their helplessness. They'll call me and they'll be pleading, they'll be begging, tell me how to reach this person. And I'll say, at some point, you have to accept that they, for now, may be unreachable through the standard persuasion or the standard programs or the standard lifestyle suggestions. They may be unreachable. And that is so hard for people to take, Marcus. I see it all the time. You got an adult kid who's 36 years old making a shambles of her life, and the parent is in agony. Somehow, some way, I gotta rescue this kid. And I tell them, you, in some respects, all you've tried has failed. At some point, you have to be at peace with the fact that now this child is in God's hands, and you'll be praying like crazy. Marcus, I have a daughter in prison. I have a daughter in prison probably for life. Now, was that a reflection of something my wife and I did? No, this daughter, we got her when she was age 2. Her birth mom was a crack prostitute, and her brain never worked right from the get-go. And everything that my wife and I did to try to help her, we had 5 group homes, 6 group homes. I was her guardian for 5 years. All kinds of in-house therapies, everything. It just didn't absorb. As a result, she finally did something egregious that we knew was coming, by the way, which is interesting. I told the court system, this is a high risk. And the court system said to me, too bad, so sad. She's an adult. She can do what she wants. And so, therefore, that's what happened. Now, my wife and I are at peace about this because we know we did what we could do. We're not looking back on it and going, oh, man, we screwed this up, we screwed that up. No, we didn't do that. Feel pretty confident saying we were loving, fair parents. Like I always used to say, my standard joke is ruined. I used to say, I got some kids going to serve the church, I got some probably going to serve time. Well, she ruined my best joke, you know? So given that, we have to be at peace. And that's what I tell parents. You're going to have to be, at some point, you're going to have to be in peace. Because God allows people to self-destruct on their own sad choices. You can keep trying to reach, but at some point, in the words of Kenny Rogers, you got to know when to fold them.
You highlighted, I love that song. I grew up with that song. You highlighted a very crucial point that I think a lot of parents heard you say and it resonated with them. And I'm going to share a little bit here. My issue was particularly with single malt Scotch, and in most of the British world, any form of Scotch is very easy to get, and so I started drinking when I was 16 and started sneaking it into my coffee in the morning and my hot chocolate in the evening.
You were a derelict.
It was bad. By the time I was 22, things got really bad, and I snuck it. My parents didn't know.
Did you live at home?
I did. I lived at home until I was 22, and so I was going through college and everything doing this. So many parents listened to what you said, and you told the courts because you could see ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Some parents have that instinct. Could you please speak to that a little more?
You know your kid better than anybody else. You know your kid better than the experts. Many parents will say to me, "Well, I'm going to get him assessed." And what are you going to get him assessed for? Well, the way he's living, I got to know why he's living this way, why he's doing that. I go, well, you probably have the most information. You raised him. Yeah, but maybe there's something I'm missing. And I always tell parents, we shrink types. We can describe pretty good. You let me interview you for 3 hours, and I'll have a pretty good sense of what makes you tick. But getting you to change it is the hardest part of any therapy. I always tell people that. I can give you 25 ideas. What I can't give you is the will to do it. And so for parents who see ahead and they see around the next corner and go, you know what? That's bad if he goes around that corner. I go, well, you have to at some point come to peace that you have tried everything you know. You have done what you can. And he refuses it. He doesn't want it. And I always tell folks, Marcus, this is not a farm in 1880. You didn't have to be anywhere near as vigilant in 1880 to keep your kid out of seductions and trouble and addictions and pornography and everything else that's coming at him. You didn't. It's very different now. Never before in human history have we been able to reach inside your house and misshape your kid's soul. For the most part, how a kid was raised, that's what he stayed with. He was raised with that, he stayed with that. Tribe, clan, culture, main influences. Not anymore. Not anymore. The culture, most parents underestimate the culture. I'll have a 17-year-old kid sitting in my office, and parent will say, I don't know who that is. We didn't raise him that way. And I'll say, well, I believe you, but I think you underestimated what did, because all along the way, they were semi-oblivious to the way the culture was shaping this kid. Like you said, you were 22 years old, and you're drinking scotch at home right under your parents' nose. They had no idea. You have to be much more vigilant.
You highlight another crucial point here. I think there was a point where historically we as a society thought that the village would help in the raising of our children.
That's the difference now. That's exactly what's happening. You go back 60 years ago in our culture, there was more of a social direction. You know, the guardrails kind of were there a little higher than they are now. The guardrails are gone. So when a parent has to stand strong and make these decisions, there's a good chance the kid's going to rebel. There's a good chance the kid's going to say, you know what? I can't wait to get out from under you, because over there where the culture's talking to me seems a lot more fun, a lot more pleasurable. And the parent's thinking, yes, it is, but it's deathly dangerous. And the kid at age 21 or 25 or 30 or 32 is going, get out my face. And that's so hard for parents to deal with now.
That's part of the modern psychological narrative, that when people seek out therapy, I've heard you speak about this. The therapist won't tell the kid you have to come to some kind of moral onus and ownership. It's your parents' fault. It's everyone else's fault. It's the culture's fault, but it's never your fault.
That's a nice message. Don't we want to have it? Think about it. Hey, I'm not making bad decisions. It's my parents who screwed me up. And that's a psychological message that's been rooted in our culture for some decades now.
And so, as parents are listening to this right now, realizing that we can do the best that we can be vigilant.
Right.
But
no guarantees.
No guarantees.
No guarantees. You know, when I hear parents who say, I have 4 kids, and all of them are still in the faith as adults, I'll say, do you realize what an aberration you are? I saw a statistic, Marcus, that said approximately 80+% of kids who raised in a Christian home go to college and lose their faith. That's bad odds. That's really bad odds. One of the things we did as parents, you weren't going away to college. We had local colleges close by, and at the very least, you're going to go 2 years at a local college. We're not sending you out for total freedom, paying all these loans, knowing you're going to probably lose your faith, and then not work in your degree field anyway. It was a lose, lose, lose. So that's one of the things we did as parents. That our kids either went to college near home or got into some special stuff. Mm-hmm.
You've brought up yet another crucial point, especially like if we want to drive back that addiction question, but also just generally losing the faith and getting entrenched in a destructive lifestyle. So many parents feel responsible, and this is one of the reasons why.
I failed. That's what they feel. I failed. And they just... One of the messages of psychology is there's a proper formula. That if you do the formula, if you're psychologically correct, then the child will be well-adjusted, make good decisions. And even among religious parents, I call it spiritual correctness. We prayed the rosary in Aramaic while we levitated over broken glass. You know? My kid was 8 years old and he was saying the Mass in the living room. We did all the Catholic things. And then, when she was 19, what the heck happened? Because they're of the mindset of, it's a guarantee if we do this. It's not a guarantee. Not anymore. I always tell people this. I say, well, was Jesus perfect? Yeah. Well, did he understand human nature? Oh, yes, perfectly. Could he do miracles? Yeah. Could he get most people to follow him? No. Oh. Let me see if I understand this. You think you're better than the God-man. You do a miracle? Can you even do a crummy card trick? That's it. At some point, you got to be at peace. That's my message. You've done everything you can at some point. And you quit saying, maybe I didn't do everything I can. At some point, you live with the peace that I, as a human being, in my limited knowledge, did what I could.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ray. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.